Breaking news in the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks fire head coach Mike Budenholzer. We talk about what this means for Milwaukee and if he could be a fit in Toronto today on Hoop Talks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, fellas and fellarinas. I'm Noor Zainab, Crina Mustafa. Don't look at me like that, Justin Pooni. And we're here on Hoop Talks. Again, everything in the NBA never stops. The mill keeps churning. And the latest report is Mike Budenholzer has been let go of his duties in Milwaukee. This comes maybe not as a shock since the Bucks lost to Miami 4-1 after being heavy favorites in that series. And we know Bucks, we know there have been a regular season team with Milwaukee, with Mike Budenholzer at the realm of everything. They posted the most combined regular season and playoff wins of any team during his tenure. He coached the Bucks for 5 seasons, and they had the league's best record in 3 of those 5 seasons. But they only won 1 championship during that tenure, and they had the MVP Giannis through that thing. So I gotta ask you guys, having let go of Mike Budenholzer now, how much blame does he face for the playoff shortcomings when it comes to Bucks, Crina? This is why you gotta add the name in there. Yeah. I have to direct the conversation because if not directed, Justin's like, oh, free for all. This is mine. I'm like, Crina. Sorry.
I assumed she was gonna throw it to me right away.
Are you joking? You just grabbed it.
Okay, sorry. I will answer now. That totally threw me off. I think it's tough because they did win a championship, which is very impressive. I think Bud is a really good coach. He's going to find work wherever he wants to go. Yeah. I think the timing of it is also a bit weird with, like, he had somebody close to him pass away recently. It's interesting to think about, like, what are the lines there, like what is acceptable and what isn't. But at the same time, 1 championship is impressive. Having a good regular season record is good, but also if you think about, like, the Raptors, like, remember when they had with Dwayne Casey and they reached like 60 wins and still weren't able to do anything. So I think that doesn't really hold as much weight. So maybe it was the right time. My only question now is, like, who are you gonna go get that is better?
Nicky Nurse, baby.
He is available, but even to you, Justin, I gotta say, if you look at his tenure with the Bucks and you break down the winning and losing percentage of the playoffs and the regular season, it kind of makes sense. And you see that, yeah, he was amazing when it came to the actual playing of the games in the regular season, but the playoffs not really, because in his tenure, 271, 120 wins regular season, but the playoffs 39 and 26. It's a bit of a drop when you're looking at the postseason.
Yes. When I look at Mike Budenholzer and him and the Milwaukee Bucks deciding to, he got fired, but they mutually decided to part ways or whatever, the nice PC thing.
Well, didn't they say they dismissed him?
They dismissed him, yeah, but it did it in like a nice way.
Better than can't come back under any circumstances.
But hey, Dylan Brooks' agent said that Shams is a weirdo for saying that, which is kind of interesting.
Well, of course his agent is going to say that.
Anyway, staying on track with the Milwaukee Bucks here.
Justin.
They're in a really, really interesting position right now. Giannis has got 2 years left on his deal before he gets a player option, and he's only going to be 31 when that player option hits, right? So it's very interesting. Chris Middleton's a free agent. Brook Lopez is a free agent. So, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks, there could be a situation where if they don't nail this head coach that Giannis wants, right, could he be like, okay, well, you know what? I won a title here. I've done everything I could to Milwaukee. I stayed. You know, I won a championship. It's now time for me to try something else, try something different, right? That, to me, is very crucial because Giannis is a player that I think wants to, we know he's an all-time great, right? He's cemented himself with his title as an all-time great. He's the best player on planet Earth right now. But you saw in that series, right? What was the biggest telling thing? Of course, everybody remembers the failure quote he gave at the end of the season, right? The famous quote, Nike turned it into an ad and all that stuff, and it's blown up. But the other thing he said was, they asked him, do you wish you guarded Jimmy Butler more? And he said, that's basically the coach's decision, kind of throwing Mike Budenholzer under the bus, right? And I think when I heard that, I'm like, okay, this might be the end of Mike Budenholzer in Milwaukee, because yes, they won that championship, but other than that, they blew a 2-0 lead to Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals, got beat by Miami in the bubble, got beat by Miami again this year. This is the prime of Giannis's career. The next 3 to 4 years, you really need to make sure you win at least another title, right? And I think they have to get younger. They're gonna have to get a coach in that basically is like to Giannis, I want you to guard the best player. I want you to do this and that. And the thing is, Jrue Holiday's come out and said that he wants to might retire once his contract is up. So
did he actually?
Yeah, he's came out and said that he might retire if his contract is up.
Really?
So it's very interesting what's going to go on in Milwaukee. I think they need to go to Giannis and be okay, who do you want as head coach? And I know people don't want to think that doesn't happen and all of that. It does. When you have a guy who's this good, who's this great, you need to have him put his input in, right? And have him decide, okay, I want this guy to be the coach because he's going to bring the best out of me and in turn bring the best out of the team. So that to me is the biggest thing in Milwaukee. As for Mike Budenholzer, look, he's going to find work anywhere. He's going to have his choice on where he wants to go. I know everybody's saying Toronto, but does he want to come to Toronto?
Yeah, let me bring that up myself. Thank you so
sorry.
much. But I
Just helping you segue.
I'm just lobbing it up.
Well, but I like something that you brought up that I want to talk about here right now too, which I'm in agreement with you when it comes to. May I please? Come on, don't give me that face. I'm in agreement with you when it comes to yes, Giannis is that guy. When you're that level of a player, your input matters the most when it comes to any changing decisions within the franchise. But then you said that. He came out and he said that I was wondering why I wasn't being put on Jimmy Butler, but that's the coach's decision. Shouldn't your influence at that moment also come into play, Crina, because you're the best player on the court? So maybe you should go to your coach and be like, Crina, you should go to your coach and be like, why am I not guarding Jimmy Butler, instead of being like, okay, well, that's what the coach says, what the coach said.
Let me ask you, because this happened before too. This happened before when they played KD. Sorry, Crina. I know.
It's okay.
Are you sorry? Are you sorry?
All right, fine, go.
You got two women here, Justin.
No, I just.
It's okay. I have something short, then you can go. I think my take on that is that ultimately, I think no matter what Giannis says, Coach Bud still would have had the final decision on that. So we don't really know what happened there. But it is interesting that he said that. But he is also right. Like ultimately, it is the coach's decision.
Yeah, and I think this happened before with Kevin. Before I cut you off, I was gonna say that the same thing happened with.
I let you speak.
I know, but I cut you off before. So look, we'll just get back on track, all right? But he said the same thing when they played the Nets in that series. Was it 2021 when they won, right? 21. People were like, I want Giannis to guard KD, and Giannis said, look, the coach's decision, right? Again, the dynamic was kind of interesting because now Giannis, under Budenholzer, we saw Giannis really grow into becoming that best player in the league, right? And maybe he never felt comfortable to take authority over that. But now he's cemented himself as the best player on planet Earth. He's a 2-time MVP, defensive. He has pull now.
Like if you let's look at Kawhi, right? We were down 0-2 to the Bucks, and we were coming back home and talking about what the adjustment needs to be. And he speaks up in the locker room and he said the only adjustment is I'm guarding Giannis. And in that moment, the best player on the court is telling you that I know what I'm doing and I'm going to override the coach in that moment. As an MVP, I would just assume of course Bud is a great coach, but if you have an MVP caliber player on your team, and we also know he's a defensive nightmare, why are you not going to use him? And maybe this is something, and that's going to be linked between Budenholzer and Nick Nurse beyond the fact that they were the two coaches that were fired this year, who had also recently just won championships. And if you look back, and Ty Lue won in 2016, got fired in 2018. Frank Vogel won in 2020, got fired in 2022. Nick Nurse, 2019, fired 2023. Budenholzer, 2021, and then fired in 2023. So it made me wonder, winning a championship, does that now put more pressure on you to win again? And does that give a franchise a reason to let go of you if you don't meet those expectations? It's interesting because you're looking at teams around the league that don't make the contendership, but they're a consistent playoff team, but those coaches stay intact. But when there's a bigger team that's contending constantly, and if they miss the window 1 year, now everyone's talking about letting the coach go. So I wonder, is your job security worse if you're part of a contending team?
Here's the thing. I think there's two things. One, it's the roster of the team, and two, it's the relationship that the coach has with the players. At least that's the common denominator that I'm seeing in all these coaches who have been fired. Because if you look at the Bucks, yes, they did really well in the regular season. However, I don't think their team was well equipped enough or athletic enough even to make a deep run in the playoffs this year. So not all of that is on coaching. We saw injuries to play a role into it. To the relationship with the players. As we saw with Nick Nurse, even though he won a championship with us in his first year as head coach, as the years went on, the relationship with Pascal Siakam, with some of the other players, kind of started to fizzle out. So I feel like even though these coaches are with successful teams, at some point things start to change. Other teams in the league become better. And I think that's the part where you're like, okay, something needs to change. And I guess it does fall on the head coach. But if you're going to fire the head coach, you also need to make changes to the roster that you have available. Because I think also, sorry, not to have such a long answer,
No,
but
please continue.
even with the Bucks, I think whatever they decide to do with the roster will also impact the head coach that they hire next.
Absolutely. And I think when you look at lately all those championship winning coaches, Steve Kerr, he has the best team of the decade, right? He's got, and the nucleus is there, and it was there before he got there, right? Clay, Steph, Draymond were there with Mark Jackson all the way through to Steve Kerr. Yes, he had Kevin Durant and stuff like that, but the infrastructure was there already, right? You look at the Raptors, that core was there before Nick Nurse got there, right? Those were Dwayne Casey's guys that he elevated to win the championship, plus, of course, Kawhi. You look at the Lakers. The Lakers one is different, right? Frank Vogel was brought defense. They won the bubble title, but after that, after they won the title, they fell off a cliff, right? And there was, of course, when you have LeBron James, that accelerates your, time frame to win, and you need a different voice. And once he lost the locker room, it was done, right? So I think the biggest thing about this is, I don't know if it's pressure. It's more so just the fit in the locker room and the messaging. Once the messaging gets stale and players tune you out, it's over. You got to switch on to do something else, and that's how
it's leadership. Everything
leadership
in
as well.
life that we've seen is all about leadership, and this is how Nick Nurse lost the locker room. And we're gonna bring this actually back to the Raptors because everything goes back to the Raptors. Got to tie back into it. Now Budenholzer is available. We are without a head coach. How do you see Masai Ujiri reacting to this news with Budenholzer being available and Toronto needing a head coach? Could he become part of the candidates that he has on his list already?
For sure. I think he's definitely, maybe he'll get an interview. Again, it's depending on, if he wants to. Again, we've seen Ime Udoka say, no. Becky Hammond, not really that interested.
Not talking about
We
them
don't know
boys.
about that yet.
Yeah, not talking about them boys. It's up to the candidate if they want to interview with the Raptors, right? I still think a guy...
So you think the coaches actually hold all the power when it comes to the Raptors right now?
Because they can turn it down. Like Mike Budenholzer, he can get a job anywhere
Yeah.
if he really wants to, right? And maybe... For all we know, he might just want to take a step back from coaching for a bit and just, like you mentioned, he had a tragedy in his family. Maybe he wants to take a year off and then reassess his options. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So...
But in terms of his fit, like, when I think about it, I'm like, absolutely, this team's going to be a regular season nightmare, but it's going to be a first-round exit every single year, and we're going to be crying our ears and eyes out. So I don't even know, do I want to be a first-round exit and have a good regular season, or do I just want to not win at all?
And also the personnel. Is the personnel attractive enough in Toronto for for coaches to want to coach these players?
You just
right?
keep going back to who even wants to come to Toronto, huh? Who even wants to be here? We know what you think, okay, Justin? But Crina, I want to ask you, as you're actually a Toronto Raptors fan, for the next head coach. Yeah, you are. Compared to him, I think we're all pretty.
Yeah,
I'm a
Alan is
Raptors
a great
fan. I'm a Raptors realist.
But for the next head coach of the Raptors, each person out there the Raptors have been thinking about interviewing holds a specific skill set. What's something that you think the next coach of the Raptors should be prioritizing when it comes to this team in their future?
Development and playing the younger guys and spreading out the minutes, because you can't run your starters into the ground. I'm sorry, especially when your starters are not good enough. I'm sorry, but that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You need to go and acquire better starters, so that you can actually have a more complete roster that you can do more stuff with and experiment with, because right now the Raptors are not in a place to be in contention, and they're in that kind of experimentation phase, building around Scotty as well, maybe Fred, we'll see what happens. But I think you need an open-minded coach that is willing to play around with the roster that they end up getting.
It really depends on what Masai wants. Does he want to develop young players? Does he want to compete for a title? Right? That to me is the biggest thing, right? I'd love for the Raptors to go young and rebuild, but then a lot of these coaches here, does Mike Budenholzer want to coach young players, right? Does Kenny Atkinson want to coach young players, right? Do they want to do a rebuild, right? So it all depends on what Masai wants, the direction of the organization they want to go in, which we still don't really know, right? And it depends on the personnel they have around, right? I'd love for them to go young and rebuild to the draft. I don't know if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
it really just depends on what Masai wants and what direction they want to
I
go.
also don't know if I can take another coach turning us down right now. So I don't know if anybody else is watching. Let's make sure that the ones that we get and target and make rumors about actually want to be here. But this is what we do here. Any rumor mills out there, we will find a way to make them about the Toronto Raptors.